Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the UE's horizon, his coffee cup in hand as he watched the stars through the main screen. 3 months into their deep space exploration mission, the crew had settled into a comfortable routine. The ship hummed quietly around them as it traveled through the dark between star systems. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at the communications station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she monitored the usual background noise of space. Radio waves from distant stars, electromagnetic pulses from nebulae, and the occasional signal from human colonies scattered across known space filled her headphones with familiar sounds. Then something changed. Amy frowned and adjusted her equipment. A new signal was coming through, weak but definitely artificial. It was not like anything in their databases. She turned up the volume and listened carefully. The signal repeated every few minutes in a pattern that seemed too organized to be natural. "Captain," Amy called out, her voice cutting through the quiet bridge chatter. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range communications array." Jake set down his coffee and walked over to her station. "What kind of something?" "It's a signal, sir. Definitely artificial, but it's not from any human source I know. The pattern is too regular to be natural interference, but too alien to be one of ours." Chief Science Officer Dr. Ben Carter looked up from his research station across the bridge. He was a tall man with graying hair who had spent most of his career studying signals from space. "Can you put it through the main speakers?" Amy nodded and switched the signal to the bridge's audio system. A series of tones filled the air, rising and falling in a pattern that sounded almost musical but clearly carried meaning. Behind the tones was something else, a background rhythm that seemed urgent, desperate even. "How long has this been transmitting?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure, sir. It's very weak, which means it's coming from a long way off. But based on the signal degradation, I'd say it's been broadcasting for a long time, maybe years." Dr. Carter was already running calculations on his computer. "If I'm reading this correctly, the signal is coming from the direction of the Vega system. That's about 25 light years from here." Commander Lisa Hayes, Jake's second-in-command, joined the group around Amy's station. She was a practical woman who always thought about the bigger picture. "Sir, if this is an alien signal, responding to it could expose humanity's location to unknown species. We don't know if they're friendly or hostile." Jake nodded. Lisa was right to be cautious. Humanity had been exploring space for only 50 years, and they had not yet encountered any intelligent alien life. The possibility that their first contact might be with a hostile species was something every space captain had to consider. "Dr. Carter, can you make any sense of this signal?" Jake asked. Ben was already working on the problem. His fingers flew over his keyboard as he ran the signal through various analysis programs. "Give me some time, Captain. I'm seeing mathematical patterns in the transmission. Basic physics constants, prime numbers, that sort of thing. It's definitely artificial. Intelligence, not natural phenomena." For the next 6 hours, the science team worked to decode the alien transmission. Amy refined the signal quality while Ben and his assistants ran it through every decryption program they had. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. "Captain," Ben called out finally, his voice tight with excitement and concern. "I think we've got something. This isn't just a signal. It's a distress call." The bridge crew gathered around Ben's station as he explained what they had discovered. The signal contained mathematical concepts that were universal, things that any intelligent species would recognize. Using these as a foundation, the alien broadcasters had built a basic communication system. They call themselves the Kalari. Ben explained, pointing to symbols on his screen. "From what I can understand, they're a peaceful species from the Vega system. But they're in trouble, big trouble." Amy had been working on cleaning up other parts of the transmission. "Sir, there are other signals mixed in with the Kalari distress call." Much stronger signals, but in a completely different language or code. Can you identify the source of these stronger signals? Jake asked. They seem to be coming from the same area of space, but they're more recent. The Kalari signal has been broadcasting for about 3 years. These other signals started about 2 years ago and have been getting stronger. Ben had been analyzing the newer signals as well. His face was grim when he looked up at the captain. Sir, based on the pattern and intensity of these transmissions, I think the Kalari are under attack. The stronger signals appear to be military communications from whatever force is attacking them. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Somewhere in space, an alien species was crying out for help while being destroyed by an unknown enemy. Dr. Carter brought up a detailed analysis on the main screen. The Kalari transmissions include what appears to be historical data about their civilization. They seem to be a species that achieved space travel through cooperation and peaceful exploration. Their technology focuses on preservation and learning rather than warfare. What about their attackers? Lisa asked. The military signals suggest a nomadic warrior culture. Their communications are harsh, commanding, and focused on conquest and resource extraction. I'm seeing references to multiple star systems and what appears to be a pattern of systematic destruction. Amy discovered something else in the transmissions that made everyone's blood run cold. Captain, I'm detecting fragments of communications from other species mixed in with the military signals. It looks like the Kalari aren't the first civilization these attackers have destroyed. Jake stared at the data on the screen. The evidence painted a clear picture of a predatory species that moved from system to system, destroying peaceful civilizations and taking what they wanted. The Kalari were just the latest victims in what appeared to be a long campaign of conquest. Sir, Amy said quietly, there's something else. The Kalari distress call includes basic information about their language. I think they've been trying to teach anyone who receives their signal how to communicate with them. Ben nodded. It's actually quite clever. They've included pronunciation guides and basic vocabulary. Someone who receives this signal could learn to speak with them, at least on a basic level. Have they tried to contact any specific species or civilizations? Jake asked. Amy checked her analysis again. Not specifically, sir. But there are references to signals they've detected from other star systems. They mention radio transmissions from the direction of Sol. I think they know about Earth. The implications hit everyone at once. The Kalari knew about humanity, at least in general terms. They had been broadcasting their distress call in all directions, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear them and come to help. Commander Hayes voiced what everyone was thinking. Captain, if we respond to this distress call, we'll be announcing humanity's presence to both the Kalari and their attackers. We don't know what kind of technology or weapons these hostile aliens possess. Jake walked to the main screen and stared out at the stars. The Vega system was invisible from their current position, but he knew that somewhere in that direction, people were dying while calling out for help. Dr. Carter, based on your analysis, how much time do the Kalari have? Ben consulted his data. The distress signal has been getting weaker over the past year. Their power sources are failing, and there are fewer and fewer transmission sites. I'd estimate they have weeks, maybe months at most. And the attacking force? Still active and apparently growing stronger. They seem to be systematically dismantling the Kalari civilization. Jake made his decision. He had joined the space service to explore the unknown and help humanity expand into the stars. But he had also sworn an oath to protect innocent life, wherever he found it. The idea of ignoring a desperate plea for help went against everything he believed in. Set course for the Vega system, he ordered. Maximum speed. Lisa stepped forward. Sir, I have to advise against this course of action. We're one ship against an unknown enemy that has apparently destroyed multiple civilizations. Jake looked. at his second-in-command and friend. Lisa, what if it was Earth broadcasting that distress call? What if it was human colonies being destroyed while crying out for help? Wouldn't you want someone out there to at least try? Lisa considered this for a moment, then nodded. Understood, sir. I'll inform the crew and begin preparations for potential combat operations. Amy, send a coded message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with alien intelligence and are proceeding to render assistance. Include all our data on both the Kalari and their attackers. Ben, I want to know everything you can learn about both species before we reach the Vega. System. Study their technology, their culture, anything that might give us an advantage or help us communicate. As the horizon changed course and accelerated toward the Vega system, Jake remained on the bridge, watching the stars. In 3 weeks, they would arrive at humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. He only hoped they would not be too late to help. The 3 weeks that followed were the longest in Captain Jake Morrison's career. Every day brought them closer to the unknown, and every day the weight of his decision pressed heavier on his shoulders. The crew of the Horizon worked around the clock to prepare for whatever they might find in the Vega system. Dr. Ben Carter barely left his laboratory during the journey. He had surrounded himself with computer screens showing alien symbols, mathematical equations, and wave pattern analyses. His team of scientists worked in shifts, taking turns to help decode more of the Kalari transmissions while Ben pushed himself to understand everything he could about both alien species. Captain, Ben called out during one of Jake's daily visits. To the science lab. I've made some important discoveries about the Kalari civilization. Jake looked at the data covering Ben's screens. Charts showed star maps, population estimates, and what appeared to be historical timelines. What have you learned? The Kalari have been spacefaring for about 800 Earth years. They've colonized 12 worlds in the Vega system, but unlike humans, they did it through cooperation rather than competition. Each world specialized in different sciences or arts, and they shared everything freely between planets. Ben brought up images that had been transmitted in the distress signals. The pictures showed beautiful cities with tall, graceful buildings that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being built on top of it. Gardens and water features were everywhere, making their cities look more like parks than the concrete and steel structures humans were used to. They're remarkable, Jake. Their entire civilization is based on learning and peaceful exploration. They've never had wars between their worlds, never fought over resources. When they developed space travel, they used it to find new places to study and explore, not to conquer. What about their technology? Jake asked. Advanced in many ways, but not military. They have incredible medical knowledge, environmental, restoration techniques, and scientific instruments that are far beyond what we have. But their weapons technology is practically non-existent. They never needed it. This information troubled Jake. A peaceful species with no military experience would be helpless against aggressive attackers. And their enemies? Ben's expression darkened. The signals from the attacking force tell a very different story. They call themselves the Drakhi, and they're everything the Kalari are not. Nomadic warriors who move from system to system, taking what they want and destroying what they don't need. The screens showed different images now. Large, angular ships that looked more like weapons than vehicles. Communications intercepts revealed a harsh, commanding language focused on conquest and domination. How many civilizations have they destroyed? Jake asked. Based on the fragments I've decoded, at least 17 different species over the past 2 centuries. They strip planets of useful resources, enslave populations for labor, and move on when there's nothing left to take. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. 17 civilizations wiped out by a single aggressive species. How big is their force? Large. The communications suggest a fleet of over 200 ships of various sizes. They've been systematically destroying the Kalari worlds for 2 years now, starting with the outer colonies and working their way toward the homeworld. In another part of the ship, Marine Captain Rick Stone was running his troops through combat, drills with an intensity that had his soldiers worried. Rick was a veteran of the corporate wars that had torn through human space 20 years earlier, and he knew what real combat looked like. "Listen up," Rick told his assembled Marines during one of their briefing sessions. "We're going into a situation where we might face enemies we've never seen before, using weapons we don't understand, fighting in conditions we can't predict." Sergeant Dan Murphy, Rick's most experienced non-commissioned officer, raised his hand. "Sir, what do we know about these Drak-Hi warriors?" "Not much, but what we do know isn't good. They've conquered 17 civilizations, which means they're experienced fighters. They use overwhelming force and psychological warfare to break. They're enemies before the real fighting starts." Rick activated a holographic display showing what little visual data they had managed to extract from the Kalari transmissions. The images were unclear, but they showed large, heavily armored figures moving through the ruins of Kalari cities. They appear to be physically larger than humans, and their equipment suggests they rely on intimidation and superior firepower. But here's the thing they don't know about us. Humans don't intimidate easily, and we've been fighting each other for our entire history. Private Kelly Johnson, one of the younger Marines, looked nervous. "Sir, how do we fight enemies who've never been defeated?" Rick smiled grimly. "The same way humans have always fought, Johnson. We adapt, we improvise, and we never give up. These Drak-Hi may have conquered peaceful species, but they've never fought anyone who fights back with everything they've got." On the bridge, Senior Pilot Kate Phillips was studying star charts and running flight simulations. She had been flying military and civilian spacecraft for 15 years, and she had never seen space combat on the scale they might be facing. "Commander Hayes," Kate called to Lisa, who was reviewing tactical reports at her station. "I've been analyzing the Drak-Hi ship configurations based on the sensor data in the Kalari transmissions." Lisa walked over to Kate's pilot station. "What have you found?" "Their ships are built for intimidation and overwhelming firepower, but they're not designed for the kind of high-speed maneuvering that human ships can handle. Look at this." Kate brought up a comparison between the horizon and the estimated specifications of Drak-Hi vessels. "Their ships are massive, probably 3 times our size, but they're built for straight-line attacks against stationary targets. They've never had to fight enemies who could outmaneuver them." "That could be an advantage," Lisa agreed. "What about their weapons?" "Energy-based, very powerful, but designed for destroying large, slow targets. Cities, space stations, cargo. Ships. If we can stay mobile and avoid direct hits, we might be able to survive long enough to make a difference." As the Horizon continued its journey toward the Vega system, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was working on a different kind of preparation. She had been studying the Kalari language and communication protocols, trying to establish a way to talk with the survivors when they arrived. "Dr. Carter," Amy called out during one of their joint work sessions, "I think I've figured out how to communicate with the Kalari in real time." Ben looked up from his analysis of Drak-Hi military signals. "How?" "The distress signal includes pronunciation guides and basic grammar rules. I've been building a translation program that should allow us to have simple conversations. It won't be perfect, but it should be enough to coordinate with any survivors." "That's excellent work, Amy. Communication will be crucial if we're going to help them effectively." Amy had also made another discovery that she hesitated to share. "Ben, there's something else. I've been analyzing the older parts of the Kalari transmissions, the historical data they included in their distress call." "What did you find?" "They've been monitoring radio transmissions from Earth for decades. They know about our wars, our conflicts, our military capabilities. I think they specifically chose to include information that would appeal to a warrior species." Ben considered this information carefully. You mean they knew that peaceful species wouldn't be able to help them, so they specifically designed their distress call to attract the attention of someone who could fight? Exactly. They may be peaceful, but they're not naive. They know what kind of help they need. On the final day of their journey to the Vega system, Captain Morrison called all department heads to a meeting in the ship's conference room. The room was tense as everyone gathered around the large table. In 6 hours, we'll drop out of faster than light. Travel at the edge of the Vega system, Jake began. I want everyone to understand what we're walking into. Dr. Carter activated the room's holographic display, showing their best estimates of the current situation in the Vega system. Based on the most recent transmissions, the Drakhi have destroyed most of the outer Kalari colonies. The homeworld of Keller Prime is still inhabited, but it's under siege. How many Kalari survivors are we talking about? Commander Hayes asked. Hard to say exactly, but probably fewer than 1 million on the homeworld, down from an original population of over 50 million across all their colonies. Marine Captain Stone leaned forward. And the Drakhi force? At least 50 ships in the immediate area, with more probably on the way. We're outnumbered by about 50 to 1. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the odds they were facing. 1 human ship against 50 alien warships that had never been defeated. Sir, Lieutenant Phillips spoke up, I've been running tactical simulations based on everything we know about Drakhi ships and tactics. We can't win a direct confrontation, but we might be able to rescue some Kalari survivors if we're smart about it. Jake nodded. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Our primary mission is to save as many Kalari lives as possible. If we can hurt the Drakhi in the process, so much the better. But our first priority is rescue. The horizon emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vega system, and what Captain Jake Morrison saw on the main screen made his heart sink. The outer regions of the system were filled with debris fields where planets had once supported thriving Kalari colonies. Twisted metal and the remains of beautiful cities drifted silently through space, like monuments to a civilization that had been torn apart. Dear God, whispered Commander Lisa Hayes as she stared at the destruction. They destroyed entire worlds. Dr. Ben Carter was already running scans from his science station. His face was pale as the data came in. Captain, I'm reading the remains of at least 8 different planets. The Drakhi didn't just attack the colonies, they completely strip-mined them. Nothing is left but empty rocks and metal debris. Senior pilot Kate Phillips guided the horizon carefully through the outer system, avoiding the larger pieces of wreckage. Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the inner system. Whatever's happening near the Kalari homeworld, it's big. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was monitoring all communication frequencies, listening for any signs of life. Captain, I'm picking up very weak transmissions from the direction of Keller Prime. The automated distress beacon is still broadcasting, but it's much weaker than before. Any other Kalari communications? Jake asked. Some scattered signals, but they're encrypted and intermittent. I think the survivors are trying to stay hidden. As the horizon moved deeper into the system, the full scope of the Drakhi occupation became clear. Lieutenant Tony Garcia, the ship's weapons officer, was tracking the alien fleet on his tactical display. Captain, I count 53 enemy vessels of various sizes. Most of them are orbiting Keller Prime in what appears to be a blockade formation. Ship types? Jake asked. Mixed fleet. I see what look like battleships, troop transports, and resource extraction vessels. They're not trying to hide their presence at all. Dr. Carter was analyzing the Drakhi ships through the horizon's long range sensors. Jake, these vessels are even larger than we estimated. The biggest ones are over 2 kilometers long. They're built like flying fortresses. Marine Captain Rick Stone joined the group on the bridge, studying the tactical situation. Captain, with respect, There's no way we can take on a fleet that size in direct combat. We need a different approach." Before Jake could respond, Amy's communication station lit up with activity. "Sir, we're being hailed. It's coming from the largest HFY vessel." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered and was replaced by the image of a massive alien warrior. The HFY commander was nearly 3 meters tall, covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. His face was hidden behind a helmet, but his voice was deep and filled with menace when he spoke. The ship's translation system converted his words into English. "Small vessel from the primitive system, I am Commander Ziekter of the HFY Empire. You have entered a harvesting zone. Identify yourself and state your business, or be destroyed." Jake stepped forward to face the alien commander. The difference in their sizes was obvious even through the communication link, but Jake's voice was steady and calm. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Horizon. Commander Ziekter, you will cease your attacks on the Kalari people and withdraw from this system immediately." The alien's response was a sound that might have been laughter. "Earth, the small yellow star? We have monitored your pathetic radio transmissions for decades. You are primitives who still fight among yourselves with crude chemical explosives. You dare to threaten the might of the HFY Empire." "This is not a threat," Jake replied. "This is a warning. Release the Kalari people and leave this system now." Commander Ziekter leaned forward, and Jake could see the alien's eyes glowing behind his helmet. "Foolish mammal, we have conquered 17 civilizations across 40 star systems. Your single ship is nothing compared to our fleet. We will add your technology to our collection and your people to our slave pens." The communication link ended abruptly, and the tactical display immediately showed HFY ships beginning to move toward the horizon. "Well," Jake said calmly, "that could have gone better." Dr. Carter was studying the approaching enemy ships on his sensors. "Captain, I'm analyzing their movement patterns and ship configurations. I think I've found something important." "What is it, Ben?" "These ships are built for intimidation and overwhelming firepower, but they're designed to fight enemies who can't fight back effectively. Look at their approach pattern. They're moving in a straight line, maximum visibility, trying to scare us into surrendering." Lieutenant Phillips was running calculations at her pilot station. "Dr. Carter is right, sir. Their ships are huge and powerful, but they're also slow and built for fighting stationary targets. They've never had to deal with enemies who could outmaneuver them." "What are you thinking, Kate?" Jake asked. "Human ships are built different from anything they've encountered. We come from a world where everything tries to kill us, so our ships are designed to be fast, tough, and able to handle extreme conditions. They're expecting us to either run away or sit still while they destroy us." Marine Captain Stone had been listening to the conversation with growing excitement. "Captain, these HFY have spent so long conquering peaceful civilizations that they've forgotten how to fight an enemy that fights back. They're bullies who've never faced anyone who could hurt them." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were outnumbered 50-1 by enemies who had never been defeated, facing weapons and technology they didn't fully understand. By any reasonable standard, they should be terrified. Instead, they looked determined, even eager for the fight to come. "Amy, can you establish contact with the Kalari survivors on the planet?" Jake asked. "I think so, sir. I've been working on the translation protocols during our journey here." "Do it. I want to talk to them before we engage the HFY fleet." Amy worked quickly at her station, sending coded signals toward Keller Prime. After several minutes, she managed to establish a weak communication link with someone on the planet's surface. "Captain, I have Elder Vex High of the Kalari Council. The translation program is working, but the conversation will be slow." The voice that came through the speakers was weak and filled with desperation, but also with a strange kind of hope. Unknown friends from the distant yellow star. We did not dare to hope that anyone would hear our call for help. I am HFY, speaker for what remains of my people. Jake stepped closer to the communication station. Elder HFY, this is Captain Morrison of the human vessel Horizon. We received your distress signal and have come to help. You have come to help? The alien's voice carried disbelief. But there is only one of your ships. The Drakhi have 50 vessels and warriors beyond counting. How can you possibly stand against them? Elder HFY, humans have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. We may be outnumbered, but we're not outmatched. Dr. Carter had been monitoring Drakhi communications during the conversation. Captain, the enemy fleet is dividing into 3 groups. It looks like they're planning to surround us and attack from multiple directions. Standard intimidation tactic, Rick Stone observed. They want us to see how hopeless our situation is. Kate Phillips was studying the enemy formation on her display. Sir, if they're splitting their fleet, that actually gives us an opportunity. We can't fight 50 ships at once, but we might be able to take on smaller groups if we're smart about it. Jake made his decision. All hands battle stations. Amy, tell Elder HFY to get his people as deep underground as possible. This is about to get very loud. Sir, Tony Garcia called from his weapons station. The lead Drakhi ships are almost in firing range. What's our weapon status, Tony? All systems ready, sir. I've loaded our heaviest kinetic rounds and prepared the missile batteries. But Captain, our weapons weren't designed to fight ships that big. Dr. Carter looked up from his scanner readings. Tony, you don't need to destroy their ships. Based on my analysis of their construction, if you can cause structural damage to their main support sections, their own weight will tear them apart. How do you know that? Jake asked. Because they're built for low-gravity species, Jake. The Drakhi evolved on worlds with much weaker gravity than Earth. Their ships are strong enough to handle normal space operations, but they can't take the kind of stress that human ships deal with routinely. Lieutenant Phillips was beginning to understand the implications. Sir, if Dr. Carter is right, we have a massive advantage. Our ship is built to handle the gravity and stress conditions of Earth. We can pull maneuvers that would tear their ships apart. Jake felt a grim smile cross his face. Then let's show them what happens when bullies pick on the wrong species. Kate, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Tony, target their lead ship's main structural supports. Rick, prepare boarding parties. Boarding parties, sir? Rick asked with surprise. If we're going to save the Kalari, we need to disable some of those ships instead of just destroying them. And the best way to disable a ship is to take control of it. Commander Hayes stepped up beside Jake. Sir, this is insane. We're about to attack a fleet that has conquered 17 civilizations. The battle began with the Horizon doing something that no enemy of the Drakhi had ever done before. Instead of running away or trying to defend themselves, the human ship accelerated directly toward the largest Drakhi vessel at a speed that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. Senior pilot Kate Phillips pushed the Horizon's engines beyond their normal limits, using acceleration forces that would have crushed the crew of any other species. But humans came from a world with strong gravity, and their bodies could handle stress that would kill most aliens. Acceleration at 12 Gs and climbing, Kate called out through gritted teeth as the ship's artificial gravity systems worked to keep the crew conscious. Commander Zichter watched from his flagship as the tiny human vessel approached at impossible speed. His tactical officers were confused by the human strategy. Commander, the Earthship is not following any known combat pattern. They appear to be attempting a suicide attack. Let them come, Zichter growled. Their primitive ship will be destroyed the moment it enters our weapons range. But when the Horizon did enter weapons range, Lieutenant Tony Garcia was ready. He had spent the journey to Vega, analyzing everything Dr. Carter had learned about Drakhi ship construction, and he knew exactly where to aim. Firing kinetic penetrators, Tony announced as he launched a salvo of tungsten rods, accelerated to nearly 10% of light speed. The Drakhi had never encountered kinetic weapons before. Their enemies had always used energy weapons that could be stopped by shields and armor. The tungsten rods punched through the alien flagship's defenses like they weren't there, striking the main structural supports that Dr. Carter had identified as weak points. The massive Drakhi ship, over 2 kilometers long and built like a flying fortress, began to tear itself apart as its own weight exceeded what its damaged structure could support. Emergency alarms screamed through the alien vessel as sections began breaking away. "Impossible," Zector snarled as his ship shuddered around him. "No primitive species has weapons that can penetrate our armor." On the Horizon's bridge, Dr. Carter was monitoring the results of their attack. Direct hit on their main support structures. "Jake, their ship is coming apart just like I predicted." But the battle was far from over. The other Drakhi ships were moving to surround the Horizon, bringing their massive energy weapons to bear. Kate Phillips began flying evasive maneuvers that pushed both the ship and crew to their limits. "Incoming energy beams," Tony called out as brilliant streams of alien fire filled the space around them. The Drakhi weapons were devastating, designed to destroy entire cities in single shots. But they were built to hit large, slow targets that couldn't fight back. Kate flew the Horizon through the enemy fire like a dancer, using the ship's superior speed and maneuverability to stay ahead of the alien weapons. "How are they moving like that?" one of the Drakhi ship commanders demanded over their communications. "No ship can change direction that quickly without tearing itself apart." What the aliens didn't understand was that human ships were built to handle the extreme conditions of Earth's environment. The Horizon could survive atmospheric entry at high speed, operate in the crushing gravity of gas giant moons, and withstand the radiation storms of solar flares. The stress of combat maneuvering was difficult, but not impossible. Marine Captain Rick Stone was preparing his boarding parties in the ship's shuttle bay. "Listen up, Marines. We're about to do something that's never been done before. We're going to board and capture an alien warship." Sergeant Dan Murphy looked at the tactical display showing the massive Drakhi vessels. "Sir, how do we get inside ships that big?" "The same way Marines have always operated, Murphy. We find the weak spots, we hit them hard, and we don't give them time to react." Rick had been studying the alien ship designs during the journey to Vega. These ships are built for intimidation, not defense against boarding actions. They have wide corridors and high ceilings designed to make their enemies feel small and helpless. They're not expecting enemies who aren't afraid of them. The first boarding opportunity came when Kate Phillips managed to disable another Drakhi ship with a precisely aimed kinetic strike. The alien vessel lost power and began drifting, its crew struggling to restore systems. "Kate, bring us alongside that disabled ship," Jake ordered. "Rick, launch your boarding teams." 2 shuttles launched from the Horizon, carrying 20 Marines each. The small human craft approached the massive alien ship like insects attacking a giant, but they moved with purpose and precision that the Drakhi had never seen before. "Drakhi vessel, prepare to be boarded," Rick announced over the communication system as his shuttle approached the alien ship's docking bay. The response from inside the enemy ship was immediate panic. The Drakhi had conquered 17 civilizations, but none of their enemies had ever dared to board their ships. They were prepared for space battles and planetary invasions, not close-quarters combat inside their own vessels. Rick's Marines cut through the alien ship's docking bay doors and stormed inside. The Drakhi's high warriors they encountered were large and heavily armed, but they fought like bullies who had never faced real opposition. "Contact front," Sergeant Murphy called out as his squad engaged the first group of alien defenders. "They're big and tough, but they don't know how to fight in confined spaces." The Drakhi were used to enemies who ran away or surrendered when faced with their superior size and firepower. They had never fought humans, who had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting creatures that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than they were. Private Kelly Johnson found herself face to face with a Drakhi warrior nearly twice her size. The alien raised his massive weapon to crush the small human, but Kelly was faster. She used the low gravity inside the alien ship to her advantage, jumping higher than any Drakhi could, and attacking the warrior's weak points that his armor didn't protect. Throughout the alien ship, similar scenes played out as human marines used their speed, adaptability, and sheer determination to overcome enemies who should have been impossible to defeat. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez had managed to establish better communication with the Kalari survivors on the planet below. "Captain, Elder Vex High is providing us with targeting data for the Drakhi ships. The Kalari have been studying their enemies for 2 years. What kind of targeting data?" Jake asked. "Weak points in their ship designs, communication frequencies, even the locations of their command centers. The Kalari may be peaceful, but they're not stupid. They've been learning everything they can about their attackers." Dr. Carter was coordinating the information from the Kalari with his own analysis. "Jake, if we can hit 3 specific ships in their fleet, we can break their entire formation. The Kalari have identified which vessels are coordinating the others." On the bridge of his damaged flagship, Commander Ziekter was beginning to understand that he was facing something completely different from any enemy the Drakhi had encountered before. "How are these humans doing this?" he demanded from his tactical officers. "They have 1 small ship against our entire fleet, yet they've already disabled 3 of our vessels and boarded 2 others." "Commander, they fight like the old legends speak of the First War," one of his officers replied nervously. "They show no fear and never retreat." Ziekter had heard the ancient stories of the First War, when the Drakhi had nearly been destroyed by enemies who fought with impossible courage and determination. Those enemies had been defeated and scattered long ago, or so the histories claimed. "These cannot be the same species," Ziekter growled. The warriors of the First War were myths. But as he watched the human ship dance through his fleet's weapons fire, while simultaneously coordinating boarding actions and precision strikes, Ziekter began to wonder if the old legends might be true after all. The tide of battle shifted when Captain Stone's Marines successfully captured the bridge of a Drakhi cruiser. "Captain Morrison, this is Stone. We have control of an enemy vessel. These alien systems are more advanced than ours, but they're also more complex. I think we can turn their own weapons against them." Jake smiled as he watched the captured Drakhi ship begin firing on its former allies. "Excellent work, Rick. How are your casualties?" "Light, sir. These aliens are tough, but they fight like they've never faced serious opposition. They rely too much on intimidation and not enough on actual combat skill." The battle reached its climax when 3 more human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Jake had sent an emergency message to Earth Command before the battle began, and reinforcements had arrived. Commander Ziekter watched in growing horror as 4 human ships, working together with captured Drakhi vessels and targeting data from the Kalari, systematically dismantled his fleet. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being destroyed or captured by enemies they had dismissed as primitive. "All vessels, retreat immediately," Ziekter ordered. "We will regroup and return with the full might of the Empire." But as his remaining ships tried to escape, they found that the humans had been planning for this possibility. The reinforcement ships had positioned themselves to block the most likely escape routes, and the Drakhi fleet was trapped. 3 days after the Battle of Keller Prime, Captain Jake Morrison stood in what had once been the command center of the Drakhi flagship. The massive alien vessel was now under human control, its surviving crew confined to secure areas while Human engineers worked to understand the advanced technology. Commander Ziekter sat in restraints across from Jake, his dark armor removed to reveal a warrior who looked far less intimidating without his fearsome equipment. The alien commander was large and powerful, but defeat had changed him. The arrogance and cruelty that had defined him for centuries were gone, replaced by something that might have been respect. "You fight like the warriors of the old legends," Ziekter said through the translation device. "I thought such beings were myths told to frighten young Drakai." Jake studied the alien commander carefully. "What old legends?" "Stories from our ancient past when my people were not the conquerors we became. Tales of warriors who showed no fear, who fought against impossible odds and somehow found ways to win. We believe they were destroyed long ago." Dr. Ben Carter was working at a nearby console, analyzing Drakai records and databases. "Jake, I think I understand what he's talking about. According to their historical files, the Drakai weren't always a conquering empire. They started as a nomadic people fleeing from something that nearly destroyed them." "Fleeing from what?" Jake asked. Ben brought up data files on his portable computer. "The records are old and fragmented, but it appears they once encountered a species that fought with the same tactics we used. Kinetic weapons, boarding actions, refusal to surrender even when outnumbered. The Drakai barely escaped that encounter and spent the next 1,000 years becoming the aggressors so they would never be victims again." Ziekter nodded slowly. "We learned that the only way to survive was to be the hunters rather than the hunted. But you humans fight like those ancient enemies, yet you came here to save others, not to conquer." "That's what humans do," Jake replied. "We protect people who can't protect themselves." The conversation was interrupted when Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, you need to see what's happening on the planet's surface." Jake and his team transported down to Keller Prime to witness something remarkable. The Kalari had emerged from their underground shelters and were working alongside human engineers to rebuild their world. But more importantly, representatives from other species were arriving daily. Elder Vex-High met Jake at the landing site, his face showing more hope than it had in years. "Captain Morrison, word of your victory has spread across the galaxy faster than we thought possible. Species that have been hiding from the Drakai for generations are coming forward." "How many species?" Jake asked. 17 so far, with more arriving each day. Some are survivors of civilizations the Drakai destroyed. Others are species that went into hiding when they learned the Drakai were expanding in their direction. They all want to know about the humans who defeated the empire that had never been defeated." As they walked through the temporary settlement that had been established near the Kalari capital, Jake saw beings of dozens of different shapes and sizes. Some were humanoid, others completely alien, but they all had one thing in common. They looked at the humans with a mixture of gratitude and awe. Dr. Carter was in his element, working with scientists from multiple species to share knowledge and technology. "Jake, this is incredible. Each of these civilizations has developed different solutions to scientific problems. The medical knowledge alone could advance human medicine by centuries." "What are they asking for in return?" Jake wanted to know. "Protection," Carter replied. "Simply, they want to know if humans will help defend them if the Drakai or other aggressive species threaten them in the future." Marine Captain Rick Stone was training a mixed group of alien volunteers in human combat tactics. The sight of peaceful species learning to fight was both encouraging and troubling. How are they adapting to military training? Jake asked Rick during one of his visits to the training ground. "Better than expected, sir. Most of these species are physically weaker than humans, but they're smart and they learn quickly. More importantly, they're motivated. They've seen what happens to civilizations that can't defend themselves." Rick gestured to a group of Kalari who were practicing with human weapons. "Elder Vex-High asked me to train his people specifically. He said they never want to be helpless again. And the other species? Same story everywhere. They're all peaceful by nature, but they understand now that sometimes peace has to be defended with force. Lieutenant Kate Phillips had been working with alien engineers to understand captured Drak-Hi technology. Captain, these alien ships are actually more advanced than ours in many ways. Their faster-than-light travel is more efficient, their energy systems are more powerful, and their manufacturing techniques are incredible. But they still lost, Jake observed, because they built everything for intimidation and overwhelming force. They never had to innovate tactically because brute force always worked before. When they met an enemy that could outthink them, their technological advantages didn't matter. The real change began when representatives from Earth arrived. Admiral Sarah Johnson, Jake's former commanding officer, brought news from home that would reshape humanity's future. "Jake, what you've done here has changed everything," Admiral Johnson told him during a private meeting. "The entire human government is debating what our role should be in galactic affairs." "What are the options being discussed?" Jake asked. "Some want to establish humanity as the dominant military power in the galaxy. Others think we should stay isolated and avoid getting involved in alien conflicts. But there's a third group that supports what you've already started doing, which is becoming the galaxy's protectors, the species that others can call when they need help against aggressors." Jake looked out at the bustling activity around the Kalari capital, where dozens of species were working together to build something new. "What do you think we should do?" "I think," Admiral Johnson said carefully, "that you've already shown us the way. When you responded to that distress call, you weren't acting as a representative of Earth's government. You were acting as a human being who heard someone calling for help. The decision was made easier when Elder Vex High and representatives from the other refugee species made a formal request. They wanted to establish something that had never existed in the galaxy, a mutual defense alliance based on cooperation, rather than domination. We proposed the formation of the Galactic Defense Coalition," Vex High announced during a meeting of all species representatives. "Each member contributes what they can, and all members are protected by the collective strength of the alliance." "What would humanity's role be in this coalition?" Admiral Johnson asked out. An elderly representative from a species called the Zephyrians spoke up. "Humans would be our military leaders and trainers. You have shown that you can defeat any aggressor, but more importantly, you have shown that you fight to protect others, not to conquer them." The vote was unanimous. Every species present wanted humanity to lead the coalition's military forces, but the most significant moment came when Commander Zeekter requested a private meeting with Jake. The former Drak-Hi leader had spent days studying human behavior and culture. "Captain Morrison, I wish to make a proposal," Zeekter said. "I'm listening. The Drak-Hi Empire is broken. Many of our worlds are in rebellion and our military is scattered. But there are still millions of my people who only know conquest and warfare. They will become pirates and raiders if they have no other path. What are you suggesting?" "Let me return to my people and teach them what I have learned from you. The Drak-Hi could become protectors instead of destroyers, but only if someone shows us how." Jake considered this carefully. "You want to reform the entire Drak-Hi Empire?" "I want to give my people a chance to become something better than what we were. You showed mercy to defeated enemies and turned them into allies. Perhaps the same transformation is possible for the Drak-Hi." 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship Harmony, which had been built using technology from a dozen different species. The ship was a symbol of what could be accomplished when civilizations worked together instead of fighting each other. "Admiral," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from her communication station, "we're receiving a distress call from the Altair system. An unknown aggressive species is attacking the colonies there." Jake smiled as he looked around at his bridge crew. which now included humans, Kaleri, reformed Drakai, and representatives from 6 other species. Set course for Altair, maximum speed, and send a message to the attackers. What should the message say, sir? Amy asked. Tell them that their actions have been noted by the Galactic Defense Coalition. Tell them that the Deathworlders are coming, and this is their only chance to withdraw peacefully. As the Harmony and its escort fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, Admiral Morrison reflected on how much had changed since that day when they first heard the Kaleri distress call. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or isolationists, but as the species that answered when others called for help.